Hi all and welcome to a new video. Today we're going to be going over how to find cheap terrain for miniature war games. I'm going to go over several methods along with links to find cheap ways to get terrain ready for war games. In a lot of my videos, mainly the skirmish and solo war games, I put a price tag of about $80 US dollars on everything here on a full table, but I want to price out alternative options in different scales and also kind of show how I came to that about $80 average amount for like a 2 foot by 2 foot table. So let's get right into the video. First, before we get into terrain, you need a mat to put terrain on. And while Amazon is cheap, the best quality I have found is Frontline Gaming. Not sponsored at all. My local game store has hosted 40k nights once a week for years, and the Frontline mats they started with are still intact and usable to this day. Every other brand I have tried just does not feel the same quality or niceness as Frontline Gaming. I honestly believe they have some of the best and highest quality mats for tabletop gaming out there. So if the game you are getting into does not already include a mat, or the terrain option you're buying does not already include one, this is where to go for them. It is well worth the price. These will last you 5 to 10 years easy, more if you take care of them. And now into actual companies I use regularly. The first one being Galeforce 9. They usually specialize in 28 or 15mm scale. Galeforce 9 is a series of terrain pieces for Battletech and more generic terrain pieces that are amazing. They also have stuff for Flames of War and Yankee terrain that is fantastic for all scales. They sell forests that are steel for 25 USD, and everything is pre-painted to a high standard. I personally own a lot of Galeforce 9 terrain. I use some of their Battlefield in a Box stuff for Flames of War. I use some of it for 40k or bolt action, especially the tree bases are amazing for bolt action. Everything they sell is cheap, pre-painted, pre-done. Well, 99% of what they sell is cheap, pre-painted, pre-done, and super easy to use. And I highly, highly recommend anything that they help sell or have through their sources. And if I didn't put these here, I would be remiss, but my primary 28mm scale Games Workshop, although they do have some smaller scale stuff for Legion Imperialis, that's never in stock long enough for me to be able to tell what it's going to actually go for on the secondary market right now. While Games Workshop stuff is more expensive, it does need to be mentioned. You can get a board of Kill Team Train for about $130. This is not as good as other deals, but also it's not terrible. It's not too bad at least. And in my opinion, the biggest drawback is having to paint the terrain. I just don't like painting terrain at all. If I can get good quality terrain pre-painted, I will go that route 9 times out of 10, no questions asked. Next up is Monster Fight Club. Monster Fight Club sells a mix of pre-painted and unpainted terrain packs. And their Monster Scenery series is a bit pricier than a lot of other options mentioned here at about $200 to $250 for a full board. However, they achieve a surprising amount of verticality and versatility in the kits they sell, and they are a very good source for modern and near-future looking buildings. A lot of this terrain goes on aesthetics as well, which you like the look of. And I really like the look of a lot of their buildings, and I mix them in with other terrain pieces I have. And when you buy the buildings individually, they're not that expensive or bad, like 40 to 80 for a good portion of them. And at that point, you're kind of getting a good deal. So it kind of depends what you're looking at and what you're trying to get into. TTCombat is up next, and they are the first primary provider of MDF terrain mentioned here. TTCombat has very cheap cardboard terrain for the 15mm sci-fi scale, and while some extra work may be needed since it is cardboard for 40 USD, it is a steal. This cardboard terrain works very well with Battletech, Titanicus, Legion Imperialis, etc. It's a lot of square boxes, but that's fine to start out with, and it will make your games feel so much better. If you do not have terrain for any of those systems, and don't want to spend an arm and a leg just yet, this is the way to go. However, they also have MDF lines of terrain for sci-fi and fantasy at all scales. And a faux table for skirmish will run you about $80, and you'll get something that looks like what it does to the right. You get a lot of verticality, versatility, and modularity with a lot of their MDF terrain, and that makes these very well worth it. Some people like working with MDF terrain, some people don't. The Goonhammer authors put it best in saying that MDF terrain is kind of like going to IKEA for wargaming terrain. You get something good, probably not the best possible, but it's really good and solid and kind of fun to build. However, I personally think MDF terrain loses some detail because you have to put a bit more effort into painting. And honestly, a lot of people think that. I also think that isn't that big of a deal. If you get some decals or something, you can get this terrain looking really nice, really pretty, and it's a bit more usable than some of the plastic terrains you could get. Although that is my opinion on MDF terrain. Next up, we have our obligatory 3D printer mention, specifically FDM. Believe it or not, you can get an FDM printer for $150 or less. The Elegoo Neptune 3, Ender 3, and Anycubic Cobra can all be found for around $150 on sales, which I highly recommend getting them on sale and not waiting for getting full price, because full price is never worth it. Now, while this is a lot to do on your own, 3D printing is its own separate hobby. If you do not have a spare 2 or 3 hours a week to help manage your 3D printer and get it working, this is not for you. But those spare 2 to 3 hours a week would instead be spent building like terrain and getting all the other stuff ready. This might be a really good option for you, because you can print anything you want, and the internet will help you find anything you want. As a full disclaimer though, I do not have an FDM printer, but I have had really good experience with the Elegoo resin printers, so I would recommend starting with them, because their customer service is fantastic and helps really fast, in my experience personally. It could be terrible on the internet, but I got a lot of free stuff from them because my Saturn was shipped damaged, and they did a really, really good job. And they have my loyalty because of that. After all anyone has to do nowadays is treat me well, and I'm pretty happy with them. If you want to let me know in the comments below what FDM printers you have and what you recommend for new people, that would be a great resource for me, as an FDM printer is kind of a foreign object to me. Next up, we have all scales in Etsy and eBay. I got a decent chunk of my terrain off of Etsy and eBay, mainly my hills. In fact, I pulled the listing from the eBay listing you see on the right there. The creators I followed no longer have active shops. At least the person I bought those hills from was probably not the official person, so, I found something that looked as similar as I could. So buyer beware and do your research. That is all I have to say on Etsy and eBay. You will find amazing deals. You'll find great deals. Be careful. Don't get scammed. And make sure you do it on like a credit card where they can, redo the charge or something goes wrong. Don't do it on your debit card, because those are harder to get the charges reversed. As somebody who used to work in banking can tell you, they're really annoying. Next up, in the primary 28 to 35 millimeter scales, we have BattleSystems. BattleSystems is fantastic. It is an amazingly cheap way to get a full set of terrain for any game system. You get boxes full of terrain that will fit any real like 2x2, 2x3 skirmish board for $100 or less, and every penny is well spent. They have terrain for everything, and it is technically pre-painted, as it is a very high durable and very high quality cardboard. My comment section cued me into BattleSystems, and I love them. They are so good, they are so fantastic. High recommend. Everything they sell is probably great. What I have bought, which is one of the things you see on the right, and then some of their more specific cyberpunk terrain, is fantastic. It is so beautiful. I love it so much, and you should really try it. It is great. And the final vendor to shout out is Bits of War. Bits of War is another MDF retailer that is very affordable and appears to combine a few sources, or a few different sections, I should say, of things they work with. MDF terrain is always solid, and as previously mentioned, it's kind of like an IKEA type thing. And Bits of War charges about $20 per kit, and have some good Frostgrave kits for under $100 that can fill out a board pretty well. They also have sci-fi along with the fantasy, and are a good companion to TTCombat's MDF. I do not believe either or is superior, as both have different things. The great thing about terrain is the aesthetic of it. You can do so many different things with so many bits of terrain, which is why I think Bits of War and TTCombat are both a good look. And just buy what you think looks better, because everybody is going to think something else looks better, and that doesn't mean your taste is bad. I feel like making this video was needed after so many comments asking how I got my prices for it. Hopefully this clued you into a new retailer. Links are in the description to each website mentioned. Originally this week was going to be a miniature agnostic focused video, but I want that video to actually be able to breathe and have a good time. So next week I'm probably going to be doing Conflict 47, and then miniature agnostic focused videos. That way I can give that video the time it needs to breathe and allow me time to do research, so that way I can make it the best it possibly could be. As I am now getting a lot of viewers. Thank you to everyone who's listened this far. I'm getting so many viewers, and I want these videos to be better and a good resource for anyone. So hopefully you stick around to see it. Have a wonderful weekend all, and I'll see you next week.